Friday night, the NBA delivered, and none of it went the way anyone expected. The Minnesota Timberwolves got blown out at home by the San Antonio Spurs. The Cleveland Cavaliers lost Game 6 on their own floor, a building where they had not lost all postseason. And now Detroit gets to host a Game 7 on Sunday with everything on the line. Let's break all of it down. We start in Minnesota because what happened at Target Center on Friday night deserves to be said plainly. The Timberwolves did not just lose Game 6, they got embarrassed in front of their own crowd. San Antonio closed out the series 139-109, and it wasn't even that close. 3 of Minnesota's 6 losses in this series came by 30 points or more. Game 2 by 49, Game 5 by 30, and Game 6 by 30 again. Those are not competitive margins, those are statements. The Spurs were the better team from the opening tip of Game 1, and the final result reflects exactly that. From the first minutes on Friday, San Antonio set the tone and never let go. The Spurs sprinted to an 18-8 lead, raining threes, most of them wide open, and Minnesota had no answer. De'Aaron Fox was driving at will, finding open shooters and controlling the entire pace. Rudy Gobert, matched up against Stephon Castle, could not contain him. The Minnesota defense never held a single stretch, and if that sounds familiar, it is because it was the same problem all series long. The Wolves kept doing the same thing that cost them from Game 1. Floating shots over Victor Wembanyama in the paint, taking bad decisions, and refusing to adjust to a defensive scheme that was eating them alive every single time. Minnesota never changed their approach, and San Antonio punished them every time they didn't. The second quarter is where any remaining hope disappeared. Minnesota went scoreless for nearly 5 minutes, while San Antonio put together a 20-0 run. The lead ballooned to 29. Julius Randle, acquired to be the veteran presence in exactly these high-stakes moments, watched a routine rebound slide straight through his hands, and off that turnover, Devin Vassell knocked down a 3 on the other end. That sequence summarized the entire Timberwolves season in one play. To their credit, Minnesota made a run late in the first half. Naz Reid caught fire and scored 18 points before the break. Shake Milton Shannon Jr. and Anthony Edwards attacked the rim and finished. The Wolves pulled it back to 74-61 at halftime, just 13 points down, momentum shifting, crowd back in it. It felt like there was still a game to be played. San Antonio walked out of the locker room and ended that conversation immediately. The lead went back to 21, then 28, then 30. Shannon Jr. missed a straightaway look. Randle bricked a wide-open shot off the front rim. Naz Reid missed from the corner. The Spurs just kept burying threes off ball movement and transition, and there was nothing Minnesota could do to slow it down. With about 8 minutes left, the lead was at 34, and Chris Finch pulled his entire rotation. The season was over. The only question left was the final margin. Now, the individual numbers need to be said out loud. Rudy Gobert, 0 points, 3 rebounds, 0 for 4 from the field in 21 minutes. For a player earning max money to protect the paint, that performance in a series-ending game is not acceptable. Julius Randle, 3 points, 1 of 8 from the field, and a plus-minus of -34 in just 24 minutes. -34 in 24 minutes. That number alone tells the story of what Minnesota's season came to. Jaden McDaniels had 13 points, but foul trouble limited his impact throughout. Anthony Edwards finished with 24, but it took him 26 shots to get there. That efficiency is not good enough for a player positioning himself as a franchise cornerstone. The only Timberwolves player who showed up for all 48 minutes was Shake Milton Shannon Jr., 21 points on 8 of 15 shooting. He was the lone complete game performer in a Minnesota uniform on Friday night. The off-season questions for this franchise are significant. What is Rudy Gobert's role going forward? Is Julius Randle the right piece alongside Edwards? And most importantly, is Anthony Edwards surrounded by the right supporting cast to make a genuine title run? Minnesota had the talent, but when it mattered most, in front of their own crowd, in a series-ending game, the Wolves came up empty. That is not a one-game problem. That is a roster and identity problem the front office has to solve this summer. Now we move to Cleveland, because what happened at Rocket Arena was just as significant, but for completely different reasons. The Cavaliers came into Game 6 with a chance to close out the Detroit Pistons and reach the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2018. Cleveland was 6-0 at home in these playoffs. They had been dominant in second halves all postseason long. The building was ready. The moment was right there in front of them. And Detroit flipped the entire script. The first half was back and forth. Cleveland grabbed an early lead, 23-17. And it looked like the Cavs were going to do what they always do at home and take control. But Detroit answered with a 10-2 run to close the first quarter and grabbed back a 2-point lead. The Pistons largely maintained it from there, though Cleveland fought back and made it a 3-point game heading into halftime. It was competitive. It felt like it could go either way. The second half told a completely different story. Detroit outscored Cleveland by 18 points after the break and won the game 115-94. The Pistons were relentless, disciplined, and composed in a do-or-die game on the road. For a young group playing their first real deep playoff run, that is a remarkable statement about how this Detroit team is built. The biggest story coming out of Cleveland's loss is James Harden. He shot the ball reasonably, 6 of 13 from the field, but his 8 turnovers were the difference between a close game and a blowout. Cleveland had 20 total turnovers on the night, and Detroit converted those into 28 points. Harden is averaging 5.0 turnovers per game in these playoffs, and that pattern of giving the ball away in closeout games is going to follow him into Game 7. That is the conversation Cleveland fans and Cleveland's front office are having tonight. The only real bright spot for the Cavaliers was Jarrett Allen. He was 5 of 6 from the floor for 13 points and grabbed 8 rebounds, 7 of them on the offensive glass, in 30 minutes. He added a block and a steal. If Cleveland wants to survive in Game 7 in Detroit, they need to run more of their offense through him on the block and around the rim. He was the only Cavalier who played with consistent physicality and purpose all night. Detroit's bench was the other defining factor. The Pistons' reserves outscored Cleveland's bench 48-19. Paul Reed and Duncan Robinson combined for 31 points on 11-16 shooting. Karis LeVert and Marcus Sasser both shot the ball well. On the Cleveland side, Sam Merrill was the only reserve who contributed anything meaningful. That 29-point bench advantage swung the momentum of the second half, and it never came back. Cleveland was 6-0 at home in these playoffs. Cleveland had been dominant in the second half of games all postseason. Detroit took both of those things away from them in one game. Now the Cavaliers have to travel to Detroit for Game 7, the same road environment where they just won Game 5 to take a 3-2 series lead. The question on Sunday is whether that road win was a genuine breakthrough or a one-game outlier. Game 7 will define this Cavaliers season. It will tell us whether Harden can show up in an elimination game on the road. It will tell us whether this Cleveland core, built around experience and depth, can handle the biggest moment of their postseason. And for Detroit, Game 7 at home is everything a young, ascending team could ask for. The Pistons have nothing to lose and everything to prove. 2 franchises eliminated, 1 series going to a deciding game. Friday night in the 2026 NBA playoffs delivered everything, and there is still more to come.